Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here to bring you a really special interview today. I have the Zoraida Cordova on my channel. If you haven't heard of this author, I know everyone was talking about that witch-inspired book that came out a couple of years ago, Labyrinth Loss, and if you haven't read her books, you need to kind of reevaluate your YA life and get some more diversity in your TBR. And today we're going to be talking about her newest release, which is Illusionary, which I was so lucky to get a copy of, so I know how it ends, but you guys don't. It'll be out today. I'll link all the links down in the description box down below so you can go, if you haven't read the first book, go buy it, and then go buy the second book, and then you have the complete story. But Zoraida, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm coming at you from Puerto Rico. I put all my stuff in storage in December and just came down here to my family's apartment. Abandoned is not the right word, but essentially abandoned. Nobody's lived here for 2 years. I walked in and I was like, oh no, what is that? It was not a dead anything. It looked kind of like a dead creature, but it was just an old paper bag that when you cover furniture with sheets. I thought they only did that in the movies, but I was like, oh my God, the furniture is covered in sheets. But anyway, that's me. I ramble and I write romance and young adult novels.
Emphasis on the romance too. We'll definitely be talking about that a little bit later on in the interview, but I wanted to ask you too, how did you get started with writing a YA or romance?
I got started writing at all when I was 13. I didn't really like to read because most of the books that they gave me in school were the sad Latino books. You know what I mean? My teachers would be like, oh, you're an immigrant. Here, read The House on Mango Street. And I'm like, oh. I already read it. I already read it. It's fine. It's great. It's a seminal piece of literature with a capital L, but it also wasn't my story, right? Because I'm not Mexican. I, came here when I was a little kid. I had a very different experience than what that book portrays. And even though my mom was a single mom and I got my books from the this shop store called Liquidators, where they just sold extra stock of things. And so I had random editions of Lord of the Rings and any classic that they just printed too many copies of and are sold for $2, right? And so that's how I bought books, because I couldn't afford books. I didn't like to read. Surprise, I became an author, and I've written 17 novels now. And I read a book called In the Forests of the Night by Amelia Atwater Rhodes. And Amelia Atwater Rhodes at the time, if you followed me, you've heard this story 1,700 times. But for those of you who are new, you're new here. Amelia Atwater Rhodes was 13 when she got published by Delacorte Random House. And I was like, I'm 13. I thought writers needed to be dead and white, and she was only white, so she wasn't dead or abandoned. And so I was just seeing that little part of myself, just a teenage girl reflected back at me, gave me the knowledge that oh, this is something that I can actually do. I don't have to be a lawyer or a doctor like my poor immigrant mother, is I'm sure that's what she wanted me to do. But then I wrote teenage characters because I was a teenager, and then that was the voice that I was the most comfortable with for a very long period of time. And I actually love the exploration of firsts. And I think that young adult literature is about hope, and and happily ever afters and things like that, which is also similar to romance. And I started writing romance in 2013, 2014, when my agent dared me to write a romance novel. And I was like, yeah, I love romance. I love romance movies. And I started coming up with a book that had the plot of the song Lucky by Britney Spears.
Okay, that's
the plot didn't say out that way. It was just a girl named Lucky who has misfortune, and is not lucky. Is not a lucky person.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up being my first romance novel, Luck on the Line.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I can now now I've read it, I'm like, okay, I can see a little bit of those influences.
Yeah. I'm ridiculous. I'm just like, oh, the most random things inspired me. And so I've been writing romance ever since. I started a pen name, Zoe Castile, Zoe with a Y and Castile with one L. And I just wanted to keep my initials the same, Zoraida Cordova, Zoe Castile. And I'm about to release my, I think, 16th book, Illusionary 16, The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, which is my adult debut, like adult literary.
I saw the cover for that one. I was like, I know that you just said like, but can I get an arc of your adult? I was like, I saw the cover. I was like, I need that. It's giving me like Mexican Gothic vibes by Sylvia
Moreno Garcia.
Moreno Garcia. I was like, you give me that vibes with that cover.
It's basically like my Practical Magic meets 100 Years of Solitude, like homage. And it's kind of like a weird family. It's the strangest thing I've written. But yeah, I'll talk to my people. My one person.
I was like, I saw the cover for that. I was like, I don't think that's YA. I think that's adult. But let me go do my research. I was like, adult, like you're writing in all the genres, so like I'm happy about that.
This is my
just
takeover.
Just give me like more romance. That's fine.
Oh
You can do like new adult. You can do like Paper Princess, like by Aaron Watt, and like slip that into YA.
Right. I remember that. Oh my god.
I was like, I read them. I was like, this was shelved as YA. I was so confused. I was like, because I read him, I'm like, oh.
That's how I feel about some literature that's shelved in YA, and I'm like, that's not. We're an inclusive group, but.
Yeah, I was like, make new adult a little bit more of a category, and then we can move some titles in there, because I feel like romance is good at the new adult. It's kind of, there is a home, like those college age romances and all that stuff. So like, just make a new adult and then like just move them in there. Just like push them in there a little bit.
I was an intern in publishing when New Adult first started, and New Adult, so I think in like around 2008, St. Martin's coined this term. And I forgot what book they were trying to market, because they were like, well, it's college, it's like 18, it's like those in-between years, right? Like, and that's what my series Luck on the Line was supposed to be. It was supposed to be this new adult trilogy, but I also I did not have the usual like all-American college, going to college for 4 years in dorms and like tailgating and all that stuff. I went to college 4 times and I dropped out 4 times. Like I gave college the old college try. And it just wasn't for me, but I still wanted to write about younger women because the market predominantly featured you're either 17 and going through your firsts, or you are a 40-year-old mother getting your second chance at love. And it felt like even 30-year-olds were not getting like everyone who was 30 was like married and like or about to get married. And I'm just like, that's just not what so many millennial women are going through. And so I think that like now we're bridging the gap, but New Adult still doesn't really have a home in bookstores.
Yeah, I wish it was a category so we can address that age range, because I do feel like I like YA, but I tend to like want like the 17 to 18 sometimes. I gravitate like the upper YA.
Yeah,
we kind of coined it in book 2, where it's like it's almost new adult, but there is a new adult, but it sits right at that edge where it could be adult. Like, or like
we kind of call it
tries to transcend the genre.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like something like I don't know if you've read King of Scars by Lee Bardugo, the other books, and right. So those books, Nikolai is in his early 20s, right? Like it's not a YA book anymore. I love, oh, look, he's my favorite character. Oh my God, I can't wait. Like, I hope that I need a season 2 of Shadow and Bone so they cast him. But like that book is a prime example of like, we've aged out. Some characters age out of YA. But I think people are publishing it. There's just nobody's making room for it. And I think it's like a marketing thing. It's a space and bookstores thing, right? Like nobody's going to give us an extra bookshelf. But people want to read it. I want to read it, right? Like I don't want like a 45-year-old guy going on a quest. I want Fonda Lee, Jade City, and S.A. Chakrabarti, right? Like I want those like younger fantasy romance. Yeah, so that's my piece.
Yeah. I completely agree, but I do want to kind of pick your brain of how did you come about with this duology? Because this is a little bit of a departure from the Brooklyn Brujas. I would call that more like urban fantasy, slightly paranormal-ish, but these two are like full-blown fantasy world. Fantasy world has maps, everything has a history, has a lore. So where did this idea for this duology come to you?
So I worked with a company called Glasstown Entertainment. If you want to read more about like working with packagers, you could read my newsletter about it. But so there are packagers, people who package books. Vampire Diaries, Gossip Girl, things like that, right? So the packager goes to an author or finds an author and says, hey, we want this kind of book. Can you write it? So I went to them and they said they wanted a high fantasy Spanish Throne of Glass. And I was like, well, I've never read Throne of Glass, but I know it's high fantasy. So like no shade. Like I know people love those books. I just haven't, there's just so many books to read. I just haven't had time. I've read the Court of Thorn and those books. But yeah, so they were like, okay, we want this and this. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, but this is how I would do it. And so we traded pitches back and forth, and I shaped the continent and the magic and the characters, and I really, really felt drawn to Renata and this young girl who grew up being used as a weapon for a king, and then having to return to the place where she was held as a child after her boo and commander gets taken, and stuff happens. And we're gonna try to keep this spoiler free.
Yeah, so don't worry, you guys. This book is out today, so you guys can go pick it up. But we'll try to keep as spoiler free as possible.
We can.
As we can.
And so,
I think, yeah. I was like, we can't really talk about the second book too much without giving away the end, but like we will, in very general terms, we can talk about it.
Yeah. So we sold it. I wrote the proposal, and then we sold it to a publisher, and it was 2 books. For book 2, we made a map. But yeah, I think I wanted, the thing that I've always wanted to write high fantasy, just like out completely secondary world. But I need my fantasy to be very, very structured. So I did a lot of research about ancient Spain, historical, the Spanish Inquisition, just to sort of learn about the things that were going on during that time period. I have a lot of books on like the medieval dining table. And I'm like, well, this is not good travel food. No wonder everyone in high fantasy eats like hardtack and hard cheese and bread. And so I was tasked with, most books that are high fantasy feel very European. And Spain is in Europe as well, but the Iberian Peninsula has a very distinct culture, and within Spain there are different cultures. So it was important for me, like when creating this, the kingdom of Puerto Leones, to show that within that kingdom there are still different cultures and different groups of people, and people look different depending on what area you're from, and to make sure it felt like a real place. And yeah, so it's just based on Spain and magic.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I absolutely loved about these books, because I feel like the story, like I'm very familiar with the story setup, like the evil overlord, but I love the fact that the world is so unique and so different. And it's not like you took the words right out of my mouth. Like I was in my review, I was like, it's not Eurocentric, and I feel like a lot of fantasy, urban fantasy, tend to draw very heavily. So you have like your elves, your orcs, very typical Eurocentric views of fantasy and what fantasy can look like. So I appreciate it. I was like, oh wait, this world, I need to like spend time to wrap my head around it to like kind of delve into, because I'm like, usually with all those other books, I can just be like, oh yeah, I know this. You have elves. You have this. You have this. You have this. Very standard, and like all the other books I read before. But I love the world in this one, and it's so interesting. To like, did you find it interesting to kind of build the lore for this world as well? Kind of go
My
into like the
favorite
magic system and everything, because I felt the magic system. I was like, I've never read this before. I was like, and I read your Brooklyn Brew House, and I was like, this is like a whole different type of magic system.
extremely different. My favorite thing to come up with in fantasy are religions and myths. So in my Brooklyn Brewhouse system, my Brooklyn Brewhouse series, the magical system is based on a connection to nature and to ancestors. With that, there is no book. There's no like book about witchcraft in Latin America that is like a Bible to people, the same way that like Wicca, the religion, has, you go to the bookstore and there's like, here's the entire bookshelf on Wicca. I probably owned most of them when I was a teenager, right? Silver Raven Wolf, Teenage Witch, How to Be a Teenage Witch. And so with my task was, how do I create something that doesn't have the myths written down? So I just made my own, right? The gods of the Brooklyn Brewhouse series are my own gods and my own pantheon. And so when I was, the ending of the Brooklyn Brewhouse trilogy was coming to a close, and I'm like, well, now I need to make them. I think I was writing them side by side though. How do I make a new religion? And so I started thinking like, what do magical people, what do people with magic, specifically the magic in the books, what do they pray to? What do they believe? And how does that belief change or affect their society, right? The king destroys the temples to the Lady of Shadows, right? Because the Moria people believe in her. Right. And so all of those things, those intricate things, the day to day, you wake up and light a candle, you wake up and say a prayer, like, right. How do people go about their day with religious iconography and things like that? And the magic itself was interesting because what we wanted to do was make sure that, we hadn't seen sensory magic before. So we were like, well, how does that work? Right. Alchemy with metal was like a pseudoscience back in the day. And now, like you can say that like different kinds of metals have different properties. Gold was said to enhance people's beauty, right? Even to their detriment. I don't remember like what time period it was, but like people would put gold with lead on their face and then get poisoned and die. Right. But so that's why like the Illusionary, the people who can create illusions in this world, their metal is gold. Right. And things like that. So it was just really fun to create them. I feel like my brain is my brain is full of like useless trivia information and like magical creatures and myths.
Yeah, I think like there's so many potentials like to go back and like do side stories for other characters that appear. Because like when I first read Incendiary, I didn't read the back, so I was like, I have no clue what I'm going into. I'm just gonna trust this author. I'm just gonna go through, and like the character in the prologue, I was like, oh, this is our heroine. And I was like, oh wait, I was totally completely wrong. I was like, who's this Renata chick over here? I was like, it took me a second because like I was like, I like this, one of the things I love about this duology is that the world is so rich, but then the characters are so rich within this world. I feel like there's a deep history that you see throughout the book, and like you can infer as well between like her going to the palace and like her relationship to all these other characters in this world. So I wondered, did you have to really get Renata's voice in your mind before you started writing the book, or were you actually thinking about doing multi POVs and jumping into other characters' heads?
I considered doing multiple POVs because did you ever read The Kiss of Deception by Mary
Yes.
Pearson? So I wanted to do something like that. But my publisher, the company that I like, they felt really strongly that it should be Renata's story. And I get it. I get it. But part of me really, really wanted to do, my first series was a mermaid trilogy, and it was from the point of view of a teenage boy. And I really excel at that voice for some reason. It's just I have fun writing like young male characters. And I think that writing Des and Castian, like my angry prince and my cocky rebel leader, that would have been so much fun for me, but it didn't happen.
That would have been so. I would have loved that, especially with what happens to our rebel leader in Incendiary. I was like, that could have been really, really interesting to see
Oh yeah.
what happened with that. I'm trying to be as big as possible. What happens to that character? I was like, because you kill a lot of characters in this book. I was like, so did you know going in, like, or were you just kind of discovering it as you were writing, and like this character, it felt right to the story to kill this character or kind of do this? If that makes any sense. I feel like I'm saying the question a little bit.
No. I like how much. So like, how much did I know about the book? Right, about the twists and turns and things like that. I had everything fairly already in my brain. Like I knew by the time I was halfway through Incendiary, I knew that book 2 would have some sort of pirates or quest and a love story. And I was very careful to put that seeds of that into Incendiary. And if you're reading closely, I think you can spot them.
Yeah, like I was kind of like guessing. I was like, wait, I know my telltale is like I need to see a body. If I don't see a body, something is a muck here. I was like, the whole scene with that one character is like that happened too quickly, and then like second book, I was like, I was right. I was like, I like that character. I was about to message him like, how did you do that to my favorite characters?
Why did you do this? One of my really good friends, Mark Ashiro, when they read, what was it, Incendiary, I got a text message like, how dare you? And I'm doing an event. We're doing an event together on May 13th. So I'm very
like hopefully there's like a live stream so I can watch it, because
there's a live stream, and it's on my Instagram, but because my brain is mush, so I can't remember where exactly. But I'm pretty sure it's through the Raven bookstore in Kansas. But it's all the information's on my website.
Because like, did you just like when I was reading, it was like, did you become friends with like Saba Chihiro or something, and that's why you're so horrible to your characters in this book? Because like,
I'm pretty sure I'm nicer than Saba to my characters.
I feel bad for the characters in the prologue. I was like, they get the
Oh
really hard
yeah,
end of
they,
this thing. I
you
was like,
know, my prologue, I think I front end a lot of the violence. Like this book
oh.
is not, this book is one of the most violent books that I've ever written.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the, like, Bruja Born has a ton of dead people turn into
Mm-hmm.
zombies, right? So like, and also like the books are so different in various different ways, right? Like I feel like have people walk away with different scenes that they, you know, that sort of stick in their mind. And I think that like if somebody asked me like what's your favorite scene in the duology of Incendiary, right, the Hollow Crown duology, i I have several scenes that I loved writing, so it's really hard for me to pick. um and the same thing with the Brooklyn Brujas, right, because they're so different from each other.
Yeah,
But
they really are the three sisters. But I like how you structure that series is like it's definitely connected, where you do get a full story arc and you get other callbacks to original characters. And like there
mhm.
was a romance in the second book that I did not realize with Rishi. I was like, did she just do? I was like, wait, hold up. I didn't. I was totally thinking Nova was Endgame, and then like I read the second book, I'm like, oh wait, no, 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 I was so wrong.
I mean, if you read the end of book one, you know, I obviously spoilers. This book has been around since 2016.
Yeah,
It's fine.
I was like, you might as well.
Um, so with Labyrinth Loss, like that book, the reason why I did three separate books from three different sisters is because my publisher only bought one book to start off with. And so that was supposed to be the end. And I guess like some people were like liking Labyrinth Loss, like the arcs. And that's why this kind of buzz is so important, because for like, especially for new authors or mid-list authors like myself, like when people get excited about your arc and things like that, your publisher, it looks really good on your publisher. And so they were like, let's take two more books. And so I was like, great, because I pitched it to you as three books. They've just been waiting here for you. They're like the girls, like, you know, nobody picks on them to dance. My favorite one of that series is Bruja Born, for sure.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah, even
That's
though I
like
get complaints about there's a scene where the character, she kisses her boyfriend after he turns into a zombie, and he has just eaten a human heart. And people are like, did he brush his teeth? And I'm like, yeah, it's not in the book, but I'm sure he brushed his teeth.
That's like the wrong question to be asking in that situation. You're like, did he brush? I'm like, he's a zombie. Who cares? He ate a heart.
He's a zombie. He just ate a heart. I'm sure she made him rinse. Yeah.
I loved how she was like, I always forget the middle character, the heroine of the first book's name, but I always remember
Alex.
Alex. I love how in the second book, Lula's like, remember when you just like trapped us all in like a dimension in hell because you didn't want to like save your powers, and our mom is just like, oh, we're so happy to have you back. I was like, I relate hardcore to Lula. I was like, I would be so side-eyeing Alex the whole. I'd be like, remember when you did that and you happened to be the most powerful witch in existence? I'm like, really? I'm over here. I can only heal things. I'm like,
but you're the most powerful witch. Okay, yeah. I relate to Lula. I think that she's, you know, she just feels so much for everybody, and I love, you know, I feel like that it's definitely like an underdog in the series, but I really love that book.
I was like, when I saw her character, I was like, okay, I need to know if her book is next because like she's my favorite right now. She's like hands down my favorite. Like there's so many interesting things and you just explored it so well with her character in that book. I was just like, I love this, especially when she gets the scar and having to like do magic too, and it's just a beautiful story. Like learning because like her looks in the first book were such a big part of her character. Like she was known to be like the most beautiful of the sisters, the one who always had a boyfriend, who everyone fawned over, and Alex kind of felt that kind of like added some tension between the sisters because Lulu was like the pretty one, like everyone liked her, and then having her deal with that, and then having her lose her boyfriend and kind of dealing with grief and loss and like, oh, I was like, I loved it. I loved it so 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 much. I was like 5 stars this book. I was like, sorry the other two books. I was like, Labyrinth Loss.
Thank
I'm like, you
you.
were good. Wayward Witch. I'm like, y'all were good, but like
You're
Blue Cup
good.
Warren is where it's at, and it has my favorite cover. So like when they
I
did the
do love
cover
that
change, I
cover.
was like, oh, I was like, these covers, the cover gods have blessed you.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky with my covers for years. In my YA life.
Mhm.
So and now with the Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, do I even have a copy? I do. Hold on.
The cover is beautiful for that one. I
Ah,
was like, that is amazing.
yeah, it's very shiny. My
It's I can't wait to read it. Like when I saw it, I was like, I didn't know you had a new book coming out. I was like, I'm like so behind on my book news. Like my head is like either going like, oh my goodness, how did I get so lost in my romance books that I'm like falling behind on my YA books that I have on my shelf. I'm like, I'm just like I'm so indecisive about what to read. So I'm like, oh wait, I just missed like two new releases from you. I'm like, I need to catch up. I need to catch up and get these books read. But there was another thing I wanted to ask you about this duology. One of the things that I really, really liked was how kind of like the two books function on a thematic level. The first book is really kind of her. She seems a little bit kind of like head underwater, not really knowing too much, like because she does have that blockage with her memories of her time originally at the palace, and she's trying to. I believe it's a really excellent like self discovery arc that the character goes on, and I like
Mhm.
how she comes into her own, but she's not like how some people like to call the Mary Sue type character. She
Sure.
makes mistakes. She really kind of gets put through the ringer a lot through these books, and I wanted to know how did you think of her character development overall? Because I feel like that kind of like not the character not really knowing who they are and having that memory blockage. How do you still
Mhm.
manage to develop that character and kind of introduce those memories in a yeah, I'm kind of really phrasing the question a little wrong, but I was really curious how you constructed her character because I found her character really, really intriguing just because of her journey that she went on and kind of like her growth throughout the two books.
Yeah. No, I think that the question is does make sense. Because Renata is a girl who has the ability to steal memories.
Mhm.
And when you have power in this world, there's a recoil, right? Like when you fire a gun and it recoils, or there's a cost to it. And like Illusionary, when they create illusions, they can get headaches and stuff like that. And if they do it too much, they can lose their eyesight. Um, Things like that, things that are tied to that. So for Rabari, who can steal memories, if you steal too many memories, this has not happened in their lifetime. So Renata has no answers. Like, how does it work?
Mhm.
She creates this thing called the gray in her mind, which is like it's like having a million closed doors in your head where you repress these memories that you've stolen. And so for her, she's sort of living. She's not sort of living. She is living with stolen pasts,
Mhm.
um, and she doesn't know what the pasts are half the time. Like it could be a really violent scene, or it could be a sweet family scene, right? Or an
Mhm.
intimate scene or something. And she doesn't know what hers are, right? Because
Mhm.
there's so many doors. What door belongs to her?
Sure.
And it is like there's like a scientific thing like in real life called like I think like the memory palace that we
Yeah,
have.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we were like, oh, how does this real science work? Doesn't matter. But there is like some scientific, basis to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so creating a character out of somebody who has no idea who she is,
Mm-hmm.
or who she is buried, or she's terrified because one, she's traumatized and she has PTSD. Two, she's in love with somebody who like is it really love, or are they together because like it always feels like the end of the world for them, right? Also, you're 17, you're in love with everyone.
Yeah.
I was, for sure. um and And so the way that I did it was just focusing in on the things that she actually wanted and the things that confused her or made her emotional. You know, I think that we're very tough in young adult to our girl characters, and we sort of expect them to act like they have the best decisions. And I knew writing Renata, that there would be there would be people who are like read her and are like, she's not likable, and she makes bad choices, impulsive choices out of emotion. And I think, like, how many times have I reacted impulsively because of emotion, because I'm like so tight or like pissed off at somebody and I just like snap, right? And like, how many times do we act without thinking? Of course, this girl in a high war time where she's on the run constantly is making mistakes and bad decisions. I make bad decisions and I'm in quarantine. So Renata has an excuse. And I think that when we create characters like that, we just have to focus on their ambition and their hearts and dreams and desires. And all Renata really wants, which she would not admit to herself, is she wants a quiet life with like somebody to love, and to make the world a better place. And that's her journey. That is like as simple as that. And I had to create the prince out of memories too. Prince Castian, we only see him in real scenes for 3 or 4 times. And every other time that he's on the page, it's a memory. And so Renata is like asking the same question that you're asking, like, how do I make a composite out of somebody if I don't have like their full story? All she has are like a memory from this person, a memory from that person. And so she just doesn't know what to think. But
yeah, I thought that was so well done because like she is kind of like distrusted by her own people that she thought she was banded together. And so they're like, "Oh, we don't trust you. Why did you do this? And like she's constantly in a state where she doesn't know where she fits into the piece of the puzzle of the whole entire narrative. But she almost feels like she knows, like almost like she knows like other people are using her as a pawn for their own gain, and it's like difficult. And she's trying to catch up, like going like okay, and making her own decisions. And of course, she's gonna make mistakes. Like I gave her a lot of leeway because I'm like, you barely even know who you are. I'm like, you can make 20 mistakes. I'm like, just like I'm giving you patience in this story. I'm like, I know you're gonna get there, and especially in Illusionary with the whole quest that they go on and what she has to do to get the object that they were going out to look for, and having that scene where she has to really acknowledge who she is, and it really becomes this really powerful narrative about the power of memories and like what that almost like a form of history, like I don't even know where I'm going with this, or like almost being stolen from a lot of people in this kingdom, other than remembering what it was like during peaceful times. And also I just love that, like how you just broadened that out and really made that really poignant part, especially in the second book. And yeah, I just love that so much. I was wondering, did you wanted to play with that a little bit, because you mentioned that a little bit with Renata's character and how it forms your opinions, like if you have bits and pieces of memories that have been removed or blocked, that definitely changes how you see the world. And especially for our rebels and what their goal is for this kingdom, is that they really just kind of want to burn it down.
yeah,
And they don't see a way, they don't remember all the good stuff that they can use to transform the kingdom into something better. So I was like, I wonder how like conscious you were playing with that idea throughout the narrative.
I think that story, like, it's essentially erasure, right? Like cultural erasure. And I'm from Ecuador. I'm from, like, so I'm from Latin America and South America. And I feel like people who come from colonized places There is sometimes a part of your culture just gets erased, right? Stories are lost. Even as recent as now, how often do we have a school in Texas trying to stop Mexican students from learning Mexican history, right? I don't think that a fantasy book like mine is too off the cuff, right? I think that it's easy to say like, oh, this happened, my research was from medieval Spain, right? The Inquisition could never happen again, right? And then the 50s happened. and I think that uh that conscious awareness, especially the colonial parts, I think that that's just a part of like me as a Latin American writer, even though I'm writing in a diaspora. So
Yeah, and I really appreciate that commentary through these books, like in conjunction with the world. And I love that we're having books like this published in the YA space now, more and more readily, so that people whose voices have not been readily available in that specific subgenre, or YA, I should say, that they're getting these stories that are told by authors from those communities. I was like, that it changes the whole game when you can take like a Harry Potter narrative and just change the cultural perspective of the world, and it becomes something you're just like, whoa, what is this? Like when Children of Bone came out, when like An Ember in the Ashes came out, it was just like you just change the perspective and the whole narrative. You're just like, wow, I can't believe I haven't read anything like this. I'm like, why haven't I learned about this? Like, why haven't these books? What were these books published like when I was like in my young years, like in like high school, like going like I would have loved to have stumbled upon these books. So I'm like so happy now that we're getting diverse YA fantasy now. I feel like we did have a couple of diverse contemporary YAs, but I love that we're
definitely
starting to get in
we've
more and
always
more.
had, yeah, we've definitely always had like YA that was by and about people of color, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Code Booth and Joel Parker Rhodes, like they existed and they're, still writing. But in the fantasy space, it was just not the way that it is now. And I'm sure it was being self-published somewhere or from a very, very small press. But we just didn't have the national access to it, right? Like, what an amazing time that we're living in when we have like, Sabaa Tahir and Danielle Clayton and so many incredible authors. And I'm just like,
And
I just feel
you,
very
don't forget
lucky.
about
And
you.
me.
I was like, don't forget yourself out of this.
Yeah. And like, it's been a struggle, right? Like I published my first book in 2012 and I feel like I'm still just constantly just like trying to find my own voice and trying to find like who I am as a writer. I feel like my goal is to just tell stories that I needed at any point in time. Because I know that if I needed a story, then somebody out there probably needs it too. So
And it's so true. Kind of going back to Brooklyn Brew House, like each of those books kind of deals with some type of essential like character issue. Like in the first book, the Alex doesn't want to come into her own power. She doesn't want to take on her legacy and her culture. She wants to just do her own thing. And Lula, like she's dealing with a boyfriend that she's dealing with like loss and grief and how to deal with that. And I just love how throughout all your books, all your characters are grappling with these really big issues, but in a very ascertainable way for the reader. Where it's like, oh wow, she's doing some like big level things in this book, but I'm not like nerding out, going like, oh wow, this is so
it's just
academically
like
intellectual.
it's like
Like
a
a popcorn flick, but I'm like I'm getting hit with like good knowledge, and I don't even know
yeah.
that I'm getting hit with all the good
I'm
stuff.
putting like fiber and nutrients into your popcorn.
I was just like, I did not know I was getting that, but then when I step back and look back, I'm like, oh wait, you just did that. Like I like that.
I So Danielle Clayton, author of The Bells, we have a podcast together called Deadline City. And in a recent episode, we talked about this exact thing, like this kind of world building with the author Rebecca Roanhorse, who's amazing.
Mhm.
And we were talking about like fantasy world building, specifically like fantasy by people of color. You know, Rebecca is Black and Indigenous, and Danielle is a Black woman, and I'm Latina. And we were just like, how do we create worlds? How do we how to like, because like the whole thing with like diverse fantasy is that people are like, well, is it accessible, right? Like, and I'm like, well, I can learn how to say Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher. You can learn to say Renata Convita, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that so in that episode we talked about like fantasy world building and how like we sort of have to have multiple layers, right? The first layer is the big fun layer. The layer, like, we're here for the magic, we're here for the world building, we're here for like any ships that decide to set sail, right? And then the next layer is like our like all the cultural layers and how that resonates, how these stories, even though they're fantasy, how do they resonate to the real world narrative? And so that's a chat that it's like an ongoing conversation that we constantly have because it's important. And I think that like as writers, like we just have to keep challenging ourselves to just make better stories.
And you guys are like, YA is like one of the spaces where I'm so proud to be like a proud YA reader.
Yeah.
That and romance. They're doing such amazing things.
There are so many haters out there, but it doesn't even matter because you know what? YA and romance are two of the best selling genres out there. Romance specifically. I think it makes up a third.
Like the Bells duology. More people need to read that. I was like, that was one of the best, like what she was doing with beauty standards and all that discussion in that book. I was like, that is absolutely amazing. And like, and Dread Nation with Justine Ireland,
that book
Andy
is
Thomas,
so good.
Marco Shiro. Like, there's some like YA books that like almost like, especially including yours, that I can easily see them giving to like adult reader and like them being easily able to like get into it and kind of breaking the whole notion that like YA may be too childish or read too young, because like the ideas that you guys are exploring and that young readers get to experience are really excellent, like really kind of big grandiose ideas, and you're not pulling any punches. Like if you want to kill off 10 characters, you're just gonna kill off 10 characters very brutally on page, which I was
7,
like, I was reading this duology and I was like, you bloodthirsty. I was like, dang. Especially in your prologue, I was like, I don't want to set foot up in this world if I know I'm like in the beginning of the story.
Yeah,
like,
definitely. I mean, I like book 2. I wrote that book. I finished that book during the height of pandemic, and so it was just really rough getting the words on the page. And so like, if you get to the end and it's like an extra happily ever after, it's because I needed it, and so does Renata, right? Like
she does. Like she goes through a lot.
This is definitely a series like there's violence, there's romance, there's magic, but there is an HEA for sure.
And like you guys, once you read Illusionary and you find out who the romance is going to be with, I was like, okay. Like I was like, I see this come. I saw it. Like it wasn't my ship. Like you destroyed my ship in book 1. I was like, maybe I'm holding out hope. But then I kept on reading. I was like, oh no. This is Endgame. I'm sorry. I was like, I felt like that part of my ship just like sinking just further down to the bottom of the ocean. But I love this duology. You guys will absolutely love this duology, especially if you want diverse fantasy. Go buy these books. You will love them. They're all, I believe this one will be on audio, Illusionary.
They're both on audio. Yeah. Illusionary will be on audio. My audiobook narrator her name is Frankie Corzo. She actually has she's in Selena the TV show. She's I think
Oh,
Selena's stylist in one of the
really?
episodes. Yeah, she's amazing. And so Frankie, as soon as she got the job for the second book, she was like, we're recording. And I was like, yes. So the pre-order links for audio always go up really late or even like the night before. So don't worry. It is happening if you're an audio reader. And Frankie kills it. So
Yeah, I listened to the audio for Incendiary. And I was like, I loved it. I loved it so much, especially with some of the terminology in the world. I was like, I would have butchered that if I tried to read it. If it was like an author that wasn't a part of like didn't know the language, I was like, I would be like, oh yeah, I would have butchered that so hard.
I
And
feel
I
like
already know
if
I
you took
would.
like Spanish, if you took Spanish in school, I made up a lot of words that are just like they sound Spanishy, and it's my first language. So I'm like, if I'm gonna butcher my own language, it's fine. But like, so that is the root language of it. So if you took like Spanish in high school or something, like I really feel like you'll pick up some words.
I may have, but like I can't roll my R's, so like it would just be like a struggle fest trying to for me to pronounce some of the words. I'm like, I'm glad we have a good narrator. And if you guys are
Oh yeah.
like, I physically read this book and I absolutely loved it. And you guys know I'm an audiobook reader, so like that is a good
I'm
sign.
an
You guys will
audiobook
like
reader,
it.
so I'm also an audiobook reader, so that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. I love this duology so much. I do have to say Brooklyn Brujas, the Brooklyn Brujas trilogy is probably still my heart and my soul. I love those three sisters. I want more from them. I want adult versions of them, just like a spin-off trilogy when they're all adults, just like fast forward 10, 20 years, just so I can see what they're getting up to. Like,
That's actually
I just
not a
can't
bad
let these
idea.
characters go.
I have thought about that so much. I have a book for Nova. I have a book for him. But my publisher, sometimes you don't agree on things, but my editor is no longer there. So I don't know. I maybe I'll self-publish it and just and like get a cover to match.
Mhm.
But
I was
I
like,
do
just
have a
indie
book for
publish it and
Nova.
drop it. Just go indie
Yeah.
on us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just
But I definitely I have not said goodbye completely to that series. It's just
mhm.
bye for now.
Yeah, I feel like with your duology, I feel like if you didn't want to explore it anymore, it's a solid endpoint for
Hmm.
that whole world and that whole story. There's definitely like side characters or like prequel stories that you could tell leading up to this duology, but I love that we got like a very solid end that didn't feel like you could come back, but like it didn't feel like you had to necessarily. Because I felt like I got the romance, I got a great story, I got a great character development, and sometimes I'd like to just imagine what the world would be in my own head. Because in my head, my ship resurfaces, and your ship, the ship in the book goes down. It's just my romance brain. Once I'm set on my ship, I will just
Uh-huh.
rewrite it in my head and
But
just be
you
like,
know what?
okay.
I feel like I felt that way until I watched The Vampire Diaries and I was like, "Oh, Stefan is my
Ooh.
ship
Mm-hmm.
forever." And then by the end of season 1, I was just like, "Stefan, who's that? I
Like
only know
Damon.
Damon Salvatore."
And you did that in this
I'm just
book.
a
I was
I'm
like,
just a
you
treacherous
teased
I'm just
them.
a treacherous hoe. It's fine. Um
But I also wanted to ask you too a little bit. Could you give us some more details about your upcoming adult release, your adult
Yeah.
debut?
So my adult debut is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. This cover is by Eric Davila, and it's based on it's inspired by a short story that I wrote for the anthology Toil and Trouble, 15
Oh, mm-hmm,
Tales.
mm-hmm,
So there was a short story there about a girl going home to her like very weird, eccentric, magical family.
mm-hmm,
And so in this book, three cousins, the Montoya cousins, they inherit their grandmother's magic. Their grandmother invites the whole family back to their homestead uh, to witness her funeral, her passing. She's still alive, but she's just like, I'm about to die. Come
oh,
here.
okay.
Come and collect your inheritance.
It's,
And so so like we don't the inheritance is magic, and they don't know how to use it. 7 years later, an entity is killing off members of their family one by one. And they're like, well, we have to figure out who is after us, why they're after us. It's obviously has something to do with our grandmother's magic.
Mm-hmm.
And so they return to Ecuador, to Guayaquil, which is where I'm from. They return to that city to investigate and discover who their grandmother was and what secrets was she hiding, right? And so it's about generational silence and pain and magic.
Okay, I already was like already interested in this book. Now I just go like, it's through the roof. I need to read it. I need to find out. Like, oh my goodness, a murder mystery 2 plot. Oh, I love that.
Somebody read it, and I definitely did not. I don't think this highly of myself, but she was like, what a reviewer said that it felt like Knives Out meets 100, like Isabel Allende to her, and I was like, wow, thank you for giving me the greatest compliment of my life. I can die happy now.
Oh wow!
But I was like,
Knives Out is an amazing mystery.
I did it. Yeah, like I was like, I definitely was not going for like. I love Rian Johnson. First of all, I'm a Star Wars girl. But yeah, so that was the greatest compliment anybody has ever paid me. I don't know if that's true, but like, I hope so. I hope people read this book because I worked.
It's true.
I worked on it for 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Actually 4. Yeah, we sold it in 2017, so it's been a very long road. But yeah, I'll have my publicist send you an arc, so you can. It comes out. It comes out September 7th. So it was originally supposed to come out later, but they were like, "Let's make it sooner," and now I'm freaking out.
Hey, it's okay. Now I have more books from you to read, and then I have your Zoe Castillo books to read as well. Now that I realized, I was like, I should have put 2 and 2 together sooner. And I was like, oh wait, I've seen these books all over the place, but I didn't make the neurons in my brain were not connecting. But I also want to talk a little about your Star Wars work too.
Oh yeah.
I unfortunately am a Star Trek fan at heart, so I can't allow Star Wars in my heart. I am like live long and prosper forever. So like, how did that come about? And I know you have one book with them, I believe, out right now. Do you have plans to kind of return and write more Star Wars books?
So they invited me to contribute to the anthology from a certain point of view, celebrating 40 years of Star Wars. That was in 2017. I'm pretty sure that I got that job because of Twitter. I am an unabashed thirst monster, and I tweeted something like, I really want to write a novel about Poe Dameron, dancing his way through the galaxy. I definitely did not say dance. Kissing his way through the galaxy is more like it, right? And like literally later that day, by the end of day, we got an invitation to contribute. Like, oh, I heard Zoraida was a Star Wars fan, and so I have never confirmed that, but that's my suspicion. Like, some good things come from Twitter. And so then a couple of years later, when they were opening up the theme park, Galaxy's Edge, they asked if I would be interested in writing a YA love story, YA romance for Star Wars. And I said, yes. How much blood do you need? Like, do you need my blood, like my DNA sample, right? Like saliva, whatever. Disney does not ask for any of those things, fortunately. But I was ready. And so I pitched them. My pitch was like, oh, they're never going to go for this. I was like, can I write the movie Before Sunrise, but set in Star Wars? Right? Like, like a 24-hour love story, essentially, if you haven't seen that movie. with is it Kevin Bacon or Ethan Hawke? I always get the two of them
It's
mixed
Kevin
up.
Bacon. I think so. I think it's Kevin
Pretty
Bacon.
sure.
I could be wrong.
I
though.
see both of their faces in my head, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's the same. They're brothers. And I've watched the whole trilogy. It's just my brain just confuses things. I have like face blindness or something. Anyway, so I pitched them this like a 24-hour love story. Two kids, they were best friends when they were younger, and they lived on the planet Batu, which is where Galaxy's Edge of theme park is. And they're separated hardcore one day, just like, you know, they were in love with each other. They were little kids, right? Like you're in love with your best friend. And 13 years later or so, they're back on Batu at the same time, right? The boy, Jules, he never left. Izzy left. She's an aspiring bounty hunter, smuggler, right? She's like trying to run with the wrong crowds, and she takes a job that winds her up at the place, you know, where she was born, and she literally crashes into this boy, and she's just like, oh my god, I know you. I was in love with you. Like, and then they lose the package, so they have to like haul ass all across. It's really, I love this book so much. It's called A Crash of Fate. And if you have never watched Star Wars, you're fine. All you need to know about Star Wars to read my book is like, there's a war, there's a rebellion, stormtroopers are all over the place. And because my character, it's like a story that exists in the galaxy, but it's not about the movies. It's not about the continuity, right? It's set between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, right? So that's where it's set, but it's set in like, my favorite part about Star Wars, the books, is thinking, what are regular people doing while Kylo Ren is being a fuckboy, and while R.I.P. I love him, and while like Luke Skywalker is in hiding or in exile, self-imposed exile, like what normal people have to put food on the table. Their planet has been invaded by stormtroopers. What are they doing, right? There's already a pecking order, right? Like there's a mob boss on the planet. And so if the stormtroopers are trying to be above her, there's going to be problems, right? So I just had a phenomenal time writing it.
Okay. You convinced me. Once you gave the description, I saw Star Wars and I was like, okay,
The audiobook is really good. It's only 7 hours.
I was like, I'm going to walk the other way because I don't know anything about Star Wars. I seen the movies, but like if you ask me anything about like the TV shows and how they all fit together, I'm like, I know Luke and Leia are siblings.
Sure.
I know some there's something with Daisy going on. There's like the Reylo thing. I know about that. But like other than that, like my knowledge is like super low. So I was like,
yeah, Jedi. Star Wars book? You know what Jedi are. Exactly. That's it. Like,
okay, that's
Jedi stormtroopers. That's all you really need to know. This is a planet. It's like a planet for smugglers and people hiding, like, you know, and then they're just small town farmers. So.
Okay, now I have my homework, so I can go back and read that one. So I can say I read all your books until like you release your next set of books, so I can be all caught up. But also, my final question, which is a fun question that I like to ask, is what are some of your favorite books/authors that you would recommend to people? You can do books or authors. I gave a little bit of an out. You can name authors.
Okay, so one of my favorite series is the Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. I'm a huge Holly Black stan. I love her. I have loved Holly Black since I read Tithe, her debut novel, about fairies in urban fantasy. Those books really like let me know like I could write urban fantasy, and so the new ones are so good, so good. Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. It's dark academia, occult societies at Yale. And I was like, I don't really like reading about colleges, but I'll give it a try. And I ended up loving it. It's so strange. The audiobook is phenomenal. Danielle Clayton, obviously, she has a new book coming out called Shattered Midnight, which is part of a series where Disney, it's like 4 books. It's from Disney Hyperion, and it's one family, but you see the family across generations, right? So Julie Dow wrote the first book, and it's called Broken Wish, and it's set in Germany. And then Danielle's writing The Descendant, who lives in New Orleans. So it's like 1920s jazz age New Orleans, magic, like, forbidden love. And then books 3 and 4 are going to be written by J.C. Cervantes and L.L. McKinney. And so it's going to be a really bomb series. The first book just came out. Book 2, the cover just got revealed. So, I mean, Danielle Clayton, she's my ride or die. So always, forever. There's just so many authors, and I always feel awful when I blank and can't name things. But I'm also reading another high fantasy. If you end up liking Incendiary, you might like Nocturna by Maya Matane, which is Dominican colonial inspired high fantasy. There's not romance in that one. Just, since we are a romance channel mostly. I've seen your other videos. So just a heads up for that one. But the world building's really cool. And I don't know if you've read Sierra Simone, but she writes some really taboo stuff. And I love her so much. She's one of my friends, and I love her so much.
Oh, Sierra Simone, I think everyone in the booktube community is like, read Priest. That's her ultimate. I feel like everyone
Sinners to me is the superior novel. But because I love him so much. I love this character and this couple, and it hits all of my ids, and I think that's her books are just all about exploring the id, and they're so smart and they're so lush, and it's like literary erotica, if that's even a category.
It is. I feel like it is because her writing is so beautiful, but it's exploring these really
and then it's just
sensual topics like Thornchapel. I was like, when I heard the pitch, I was like, what?
I'm reading 3, and I'm like, oh, she just got so weird, but I'm in. I'm just in it. Let's just do this. There's.
Oh, I haven't read it yet. I have the first book. I just haven't got around to it because I know I'm gonna like it. But then I'm one of those people that will read 10 different other books before reading the book I actually want, because I'm like, I need to hype myself down a little bit.
So I read the first 2 on audio, and then I know that books 3 and 4 are being recorded now. And so I wanted to wait until they were recorded, but then I couldn't wait, so I just started reading them anyway. And so now I'm reading the ebooks, and I'm just like, oh my God, how could you do this to me? But yeah. You know.
I know. We all know on this romance channel, we know what Sierra Simone can get up to in her book. So I heard rumorings about some of the plot twists that happen in the book. I'm like, I can't wait, but I'm waiting for all the audios to be made available so I can just go boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. So they're coming soon, but 1 and 2 are already available for sure.
Oh, okay. That is so cool. I forgot, there's one other question. Sure. I promise this is the final question. What are some of your favorite movies and TV shows that you've been watching so far this year? I know you mentioned Shadow and Bone.
Oh yeah, I got to get an early screener of Shadow and Bone. So I watched it the week before it came out, and I was like, oh my God, I can't tell anybody. I can't talk about it. Why? I was gonna blow up. My brain was gonna explode.
I'm so jealous.
But I got a screener for BuzzFeed because if you go to my link tree, I have a link to it, or just like buzzfeed.com/Zoraida Cordova, and like my articles should pop up. And I do this thing for BuzzFeed where I compare the book to the TV show and like what's different. And so I did that, and I also did my 101 reactions to Shadow and Bone, and I had to cut it down from 200. Like, my editor was just like, this is too much. And I was like, but they're so funny. And I'm like, some of them were not funny. Like, some of them was, I'm pretty sure I cut out 100 instances of me going like, oh my fucking God, Ben Barnes. Right? Like, so I was like, all right, I'll be professional. 101. She actually said, get it down to under 100. And I was like, what about 101 compromise? And so that worked out. But I actually, surprised to nobody, I have a really terrible taste in movies. I've been rewatching the Marvel movies in order.
Ooh, okay.
I skip the Hulk movie because I just don't like it. I just think like they just didn't have a good budget. No.
Yeah.
The only Bruce Banner I love is Mark Ruffalo. And so I made it up to, I think, Guardians 2. And then I had to buckle down with Deadline. So I'm a really big fan of like campy superhero movies. And I wish that the DC movies were as good as the Marvel movies. Controversial takes, right? The Mandalorian, obviously. The WandaVision was incredible. Such smart storytelling. And I've just been rewatching. I've been rewatching a lot of romantic comedies for research.
Oh, am I to expect a adult rom-com from you in the near future?
You know, I feel like I don't think I could ever write a true rom-com, but I definitely want to go back to I definitely want to revive Zoe Castile and write another romance. I've had an idea for the longest time. I don't think it'll be the com part of rom-com, but it'll definitely be like a millennial romance with like 3 to 4 chili peppers at least, right?
Okay. I was like, don't be pulling 1 to 2 closed door-ish on me. I was like, no. That's not even Shadow and Bone. I was like, I think Lee, you have to make Alina and the Darkling a full-on couple. Like, I know what happens in the books, but just you're in the TV show. Like, the chemistry, that scene in the map room, I was just like, okay, like, I like what they do with Mal and Alina. Like, I bought them more in the TV show because I feel like everyone's like, oh, Nikolai, why didn't she choose Nikolai? It was like in this one, I felt Mal and Alina.
You
I was
felt
like,
the Melina.
You felt the chemistry within the Darkling. I'm like, hey, if this is in my romance brain, make this a reverse harem, and then everyone can be together.
Oh my God. An embarrassment of riches, really, is what Ravka is.
Yeah, I love this show too. I finished it a couple of days ago. I love how they intertwine the Six of Crows.
That was so good. Six of Crows is my favorite book. My favorite book of the Grishaverse.
And I know Nina and Matthias. Oh, sorry, that's I'm sorry. I'm gonna say it, but I think everyone has watched it by now. If you're a fan of the books, when they were, I was like, why didn't they like advertise this? I was like, hold up. I was like, is that Nina? I'm like, hold up, is that guy in the Matthias? I was like,
it's because they're not like because I'm pretty sure this is not official, but I think it's because the 6 main characters are the lead actors, so they're mostly like they're in all the promo stuff, and Nina and Matthias are side characters technically, even though they like their storyline is the stuff that enemies to lovers dreams are made out of, right?
I know it's like
perfect.
The ice igloo scene where they had I was like, I love you, Nina.
Yep. And I just kept walking around being like, turn around, turn, just to like nobody in my house. But I was like, turn around. And I'm like, yeah.
I 100% get that. I was like, I sometimes I need to take off my romance cap and like put on my YA or like other genre cap because like in my mind I'm like, oh, you can do reverse harem, you can do polyamorous, you can do. There's so many ways you can make this work in a romance space. I'm like, you can do this. You can do this TV show. You can make it PG-13. You just like
It's
say,
already PG-16 for violence, but I'm just like, I know we don't want to be like, they don't want to like, Game of Thrones it up where it's just like
mhm.
gratuitous sex and violence towards women, but the people are here for a reason.
I was like, you guys did publish 13 Reasons Why, even though as controversial as that show was, that was like a definitely a mature content that happened in that scene.
Ugh.
I was like, just give me a couple of Alina and Darkling scenes. I'm like, they clearly have the chemistry. They clearly have the chemistry. I was like, especially at the end, I was like, you guys know he's not dead. I was like, come on, like that was too easy for like a
Oh yeah,
1,000-year-old being.
I feel like there's a theme or there's a recurring instance where Ben Barnes is a character and then he shows up in season 2 as like super scarred, like Billy when he was Billy in
Mhm.
The Punisher. And I'm like, as if Ben Barnes being scarred is going to make me love him less. Like he's just literally more attractive.
I was like, man, they cast the wrong. I was like, I feel bad for Mal now. I'm like, you have a battle, and then when Nikolai comes out on the scene, I'm like, oh wow.
Mm,
I was like, I need this like love square or triangle to continue on throughout many many seasons. Just never
look,
choose.
Alina has to save the world. Maybe the boys can just be their own harem. Like she can go save the world, and then like the boys can just hang out.
Yep, I 100% agree. But thank you so much, Rick, for coming on my channel. Illusionary is out today, so go pick up your copy. It's available in audio, ebook, and paperback. You guys will love it. Trust me, you will love it. If you want to even read more books, I would highly recommend the Brooklyn Bruja series. That's my ultimate favorite. I was like, you will love that. Just read Bruja Morin. Just read Lula's book, and then you'll be hooked on the other two books as well. So you want to go back and find out about the other sisters. But thank you so much. I'll link Zoraida's social media links and website and all the links to buy the books down in the description box down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.
Bye.